Hi, this is Jared Sparks, the Compliance Manager with Brock Partners. Heard you want to talk a little bit about compliance today, so I want to give you the information needed for a great start in compliance. The first one is we're going to talk about our compliance call flow. There are 10 points that we have found with every carrier that need to be met inside a telephonic sales call for any sales agent. The first one's going to be you're a licensed agent on a recorded line. Don't say you're a licensed Medicare advisor. Don't say you're just a Medicare advisor. Don't say you're with Medicare or any carrier. You're just a licensed agent on a recorded line. CMS requires agents to identify themselves as a licensed agent and not imply any kind of government affiliation. That gives you transparency, and it establishes trust and sets the tone for a very compliant call. The next one, immediately follow up with that scope of appointment. We need that client's consent, so you can obtain a signed or a verbal scope of appointment before discussing a Medicare Advantage or Part D plan. But they do require, and they being CMS, require us to get SOAs to limit the discussion only to the products that the beneficiary agreed to. So if you want to speak about hospital indemnity plans, catch a heart attack and stroke, just make sure that that selection is on your scope of appointment and your client checks that box before the meeting. The next one we're going to do is confirmation of Medicare Part A and Part B. Now, I know that you guys are already getting this information, which is perfect. However, any sales call that is requested for a grievance or CTM issue, they need to hear that confirmation within that call. So it's a good practice that even if you already have the information, go ahead and repeat that back to the client. That prevents any kind of enrollment denials, CMS complaints, or coverage lapses, which is a great thing, not only for you, but as well as the client. The next section of the call is going to be the power of attorney question, or the authorized representative check. So we word it like, are you making all of your own healthcare decisions, or does someone help you with those, or do you have someone that's legally authorized to act on your behalf? It's a good way to ask that question because it has the client telling themselves if they do have a power of attorney. But it also protects the vulnerable beneficiaries and prevents invalid enrollments as well as fraud allegations, which is something, if you've never faced, it's not very fun to go through. And that's just one question that can keep you out of hot water as far as that's concerned. Doctor and hospital networks. So as for the beneficiary's primary doctor, any specialist that they may have, and their preferred hospitals. Once you have all that information, still want to verify the network participation for all of those doctors. Some of those may be different, and a network mismatch is one of CMS's top complaints, but that also ensures that the beneficiary can keep their providers. It prevents disenrollment, so it's really good for retention and as well as member satisfaction. We do have a lot of grievances come in just for out-of-network providers, and this is easily compatible if you would just go ahead and verify all those networks and doctors while you have the client on the phone. Prescription drug and pharmacy review. Again, I know you guys are doing this, but the way that CMS is they want you to be very in-depth here. They want to know what tier the medications are on, how much it's going to cost at the pharmacy, and you do have the ability to check every single bit of that using Sunfire and enrollment platforms, but as well as Medicare.gov. Use that as a very good resource, but the formulary placement, the tier the medication is on, what cost sharing, as well as restrictions. Does that medication need prior authorization? Does it have step therapy? Are there quantity limits there? All of those things are discussions you need to have with your client to ensure that you're making the most out of the appointment, but also putting in the beneficiary in the most adequate position that you possibly can. Now, when we're talking summary of benefits, that would be the next step in the call flow. If you think you should say it, you probably should. If you think you should skip it, you probably shouldn't. What we've found is HMO plans, even though they have in-network cost, even when clients want to talk about a PPO plan, the agent is only going over the in-network. They also need to know what out-of-network cost and cost sharing would be and how that's going to look if they step outside of the network. That's a big driver. So copays, deductibles, max out-of-pockets, their dental, vision, hearing benefits, all of that needs to be clearly explained to the client, and then ask them at the end, are there any questions that you may have? A lot of the CTM and grievance issues that we have is by agents not doing a good enough job explaining the summary of benefits, and then the client just calls in to the carrier or to Medicare with questions because they do not have the answer. So if we do a good job in the beginning and then also give the client our direct office number, that would be very helpful in retention practices. Now, clear consent to enroll would be the next step of our call flow. Would you like to move forward and enroll into this Medicare Advantage plan, or would you like to move forward and enroll into this Part D prescription drug plan today? That's an easy way to ask it. And then as you go on in, CMS does require explicit verbal consent before the enrollment, and it protects against enrolled without consent grievances, which is actually number one with the top 3 carriers. So that would be very helpful there. That clear consent to enroll on the call would definitely take care of that. Now, state the plan name clearly. So you're enrolling into, for this case, we'll say a carrier that starts with H, and then you do want to specify that plan name. So if it's Honor PPO, Eagle PPO, you do want to specify that. And if it's a HMO, you want to tell the client that as well. The entirety of the plan name does need to be heard in the recorded call, because the beneficiary must know exactly which plan they're selecting, and that prevents carrier complaints and that the member did not know what they had enrolled into. When we're talking about specify the plan type, HMO or PPO, the HMO and the PPO, when you're talking about that with your client, make sure that they know that HMOs could require referrals, and it is an in-network only plan, meaning their doctors, their hospitals, all of that has to be a network. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to use that plan. Now, as far as a PPO goes, yes, they do have the ability to step inside and outside of that network. But when they step outside of the network, that client does need to know exactly what the cost would be and what that cost share is on the PPO plan in an out-of-network circumstance. That'll keep you in a good position, and that prevents complaints regarding network access or even referral situations there. Now, proper application, signature, or voice authorization, that's a big one here, but I want to go through all of the avenues that you do have. So you can obtain either an electronic signature via a text code or email code, a recorded verbal attestation, or a paper signature. Now, while this is required by CMS, it validates and confirms the consumer is knowingly enrolling into the plan in which you're speaking on. It ensures compliance with CMS application rules, and it protects both the agent and the beneficiary if the enrollment is audited. Now, we are required to keep all of these call recordings for 10 years currently, and I know that's going to change soon, but anything from October 1st of this year prior still has that 10-year limitation on saving those calls. So just to go back through it, the compliant call flow steps are licensed agent disclosure on a recorded line, scope of appointment, confirm Medicare A and B on the call, power of attorney or authorized legal representative status, doctor and hospital networks. Do not miss that. That's one of the biggest drivers that we see as far as CTM and grievances. Prescriptions and pharmacies. Even if this is a veteran and they're getting everything from the VA or they're utilizing TRICARE for Life, still ask the question on the call to confirm that those clients aren't getting any medications outside of the VA. I've personally ran into that quite a few times where some clients are. Review the summary of benefits in great detail, and then ask the client if they have any questions. If they do, let's go ahead and get those answered right then. If you don't know, tell the client that, and then we will help you find the answer. But at the end of the day, this is just a good retention process. And then get your clear consent to enroll. State your plan name clearly. Also state whether it's a HMO or PPO. And then finally, collect the proper app signature. If there's any way that we can help you as far as compliance is concerned, do not hesitate to reach out. You can give us a call directly at Brock Partners at 662-844-3300, or you can email me directly at jsparks@brockpartners.com. Be compliant, be straight, and have a great AP.